If you had asked me 3 years ago what love looked like, I would have described him. Tall, confident, the kind of guy who could walk into a crowded bar in downtown Chicago and somehow make the whole room orbit around him. That's where we met, a Friday night in River North. I was out with coworkers celebrating a promotion, feeling proud of myself for the first time in a long time. He sent over a round of drinks before he even introduced himself. When he finally walked up to me, he smiled like he already knew I was going to say yes to whatever he asked next. His name was Ryan. He told me he worked in commercial real estate, said he owned his condo near Lincoln Park, drove a black Audi. Perfect teeth, perfect hair. The kind of man who made you feel chosen. He said I had main character energy. I laughed at that. No one had ever said anything like that to me before. That was the beginning. The first few months felt like a movie montage. Rooftop dinners, weekend trips to Lake Geneva, flowers sent to my office just because he couldn't stop thinking about me. He posted photos of us constantly, captions about how lucky he was, how he'd finally found someone who understood him. My friends adored him. My mom cried the first time she met him because she thought I'd finally found a good one. Looking back, I can see the speed of it all, how quickly he pushed things forward. By month 4, he was talking about moving in together. By month 6, he had a key to my apartment. He said my place felt more like home than his condo, said he slept better next to me. I thought that was romantic. The first crack didn't look like a crack. It looked like a joke. We were at a barbecue at my friend Hannah's place in the suburbs. I was telling a story about a disaster client call at work, laughing at myself, and Ryan cut in mid-sentence. "That's not how it happened," he said casually. "You're exaggerating. You always do that." Everyone laughed awkwardly. I felt heat crawl up my neck. "I'm not exaggerating," I said, trying to keep it light. He smirked. "Dave, you're cute, but you dramatize everything." It was small. It shouldn't have mattered, but something in his tone made me feel about 2 inches tall, like I had been corrected by a teacher in front of the class. Later in the car, I told him that embarrassed me. He sighed, like I was exhausting. "You're way too sensitive. I was kidding. God, you always twist things." I ended up apologizing. That became a pattern I didn't recognize until it was too late. He started pointing out little things about me. The way I dressed for work was too safe. The way I laughed was a little loud. He told me my friends were jealous of our relationship, said Hannah flirted with him when I wasn't looking. "Open your eyes," he'd say. "I see things you don't." At first, I thought he was protective. Then I started canceling plans. I didn't want him uncomfortable. I didn't want fights. Moving in together felt like the next logical step. He said we'd save money, said his condo had better space and parking. So I broke my lease and packed up my life into labeled boxes. I remember standing in his living room in Lincoln Park, sunlight pouring through the tall windows, thinking I was stepping into adulthood. The shift was subtle. He started keeping track of everything: who texted me, how long I was on Instagram, if I took longer than usual to get home from work. One night I stopped for gas and didn't tell him. When I walked in, he was sitting on the couch, TV off, lights low. "You're 30 minutes late," he said flatly. I had to fill up my tank. "You couldn't text?" I stared at him. I didn't think it was a big deal. It is to me. He didn't yell. That was the thing. He never yelled. His control came wrapped in calm logic, like he was the only rational one in the room. Arguments always ended the same way. Me crying, him composed. Me trying to explain how something made me feel, him dissecting my words until I questioned whether I'd imagined the whole thing. "You're rewriting history," he'd say. "That's not what happened." Eventually, I stopped trusting my own memory. He loved admiration, craved it. If I didn't compliment him enough, he'd withdraw, go cold. If I did well at work and came home excited, he'd find a way to outshine me. "That's cute," he said once when I told him about landing a major account, "but you know I closed a $2 million deal today, right?" It was never enough for him to just be proud of me. There always had to be a scoreboard. The affection became conditional. If I questioned him, he'd sleep facing the other way. If I challenged him, he'd leave for hours without telling me where he was. Then he'd come back like nothing happened. "You're overthinking again," he'd say, kissing my forehead like I was a child. There were moments, though, when he was perfect. That's what kept me hooked. He'd plan surprise date nights. He'd hold my face and tell me I was the love of his life. He'd talk about our future house in the suburbs, about kids with my eyes and his confidence. I clung to those versions of him. About a year in, I found myself apologizing for things I didn't understand. Apologizing for his bad moods. Apologizing for bringing up concerns. Apologizing for needing reassurance. One Sunday morning, I woke up early and made coffee. He came into the kitchen scrolling through his phone, jaw tight. "What's wrong?" I asked. He didn't look up. "Why did you like Mark's photo?" Mark was a coworker, a group shot from a team outing. "It was just a picture." "You don't think that's disrespectful?"
My stomach dropped. Disrespectful how? You know he has a thing for you. That's not true. Ryan finally looked at me, eyes sharp. Don't lie to me. I felt like I was on trial. After that, I started shrinking. I muted male coworkers on social media. I stopped wearing certain dresses because he said they drew attention. I filtered my stories before telling them, anticipating how he might twist them. My world got smaller and smaller, but somehow I believed it was love. The first time I thought about leaving was after a Christmas party at his firm. I wore a red dress he picked out, spent an hour doing my hair. The entire night, he barely introduced me to anyone. He floated around the room, laughing too loudly, shaking hands, basking in attention. At one point, I watched him with a brunette in a black jumpsuit, his hand resting a little too low on her back. When I brought it up in the car, he laughed. You're embarrassing yourself. She's a client. She was touching you. You're insecure. That's not my problem. I stared out the window at the snow falling over Lakeshore Drive and felt something inside me crack. But the real unraveling didn't start until the night his phone buzzed at 2:17 a.m. He was in the shower. We'd gone to bed after another tense, silent dinner. His phone lit up on the nightstand. I wasn't the type to snoop. I'd never been that woman. But something about the time, the way my chest tightened, made me glance at the screen. A name I didn't recognize. Sophie. The message preview was short. I miss you already. My heart didn't race. It slowed. Everything in the room felt distant, like I was underwater. I told myself it could be anyone. A coworker, a friend, a wrong number. But I picked up the phone, and that was the moment my entire reality began to shift. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped his phone.
I'd never gone through someone's messages before. Not in any relationship. I always believed if you had to snoop, it was already over. But standing there in the dark bedroom at 2:17 a.m., with the shower running and steam creeping under the door, something in me snapped. It wasn't even anger. It was clarity. His phone wasn't locked. I tapped the message. The thread opened, and my entire body went cold. It wasn't just one text. It was weeks, maybe months. The scroll bar on the side was tiny. There were selfies from her, a blonde, maybe early 30s, posing in what looked like a bathroom mirror. There were pictures of them together. At restaurants I recognized, a rooftop bar in West Loop, a steakhouse we'd gone to for our anniversary. There was one photo of him in the exact navy blazer I bought him for Christmas. Her message from earlier that night sat near the bottom. I can't believe you had to leave so soon. I hate when she's home. She. Me. I felt like someone had punched through my rib cage and was squeezing my lungs. I scrolled up. I'll tell her soon, he had written 2 weeks ago. Just need the right timing. Tell her what? Another message from him. You know you're the only one who really understands me. The words were almost identical to things he used to say to me. My brain tried to reject it. Maybe it was old, maybe it was before we were serious, maybe a photo time-stamped from 3 nights ago. Him in our kitchen. Our kitchen. The marble counter I had insisted on. He must have taken it while I was in the shower. He wrote, "Wish you were here instead." The shower shut off. I barely had time to place the phone back on the nightstand before he walked out in a towel, steam curling around him. He looked relaxed, clean, completely unaware that the entire structure of his double life was seconds from collapsing. He crawled into bed beside me like nothing was wrong. "Why are you awake?" he murmured. I turned to face him. I don't know what my expression looked like, but his eyes narrowed slightly. "Who's Sophie?" He didn't flinch. That's what haunts me the most. He didn't stutter, didn't blink too fast, didn't look guilty. "Who?" "Sophie. She texted you." He let out a small, almost amused breath. "You went through my phone?" "Answer the question." He rolled onto his back and stared at the ceiling like I was inconveniencing him. "She's a client. She misses you already." He shrugged. "We had a late meeting. She's dramatic." My chest tightened. "She said she hates when I'm home." That was the first flicker. Not panic. Calculation. "You misunderstood," he said calmly. "You always jump to conclusions." I sat up. "There are pictures of you too. It's called networking. At a rooftop bar? At a steakhouse? In our kitchen?" He turned to me slowly, his face shifting from bored to irritated. "You invaded my privacy. That's the real issue here." I actually laughed. It sounded unhinged. "The real issue? You don't trust me. That's toxic." Toxic. The word echoed in my head. For a split second, I almost believed him. That familiar disorientation started creeping in. Maybe I had misread it. Maybe... I
saw the messages, I said quietly. I saw you tell her you'd tell me soon. He stared at me for a long moment, then shook his head. You're twisting context. What context makes that okay? He sat up abruptly. I'm not doing this at 3 a.m. There is no this, Ryan. You're cheating on me. His jaw hardened. Lower your voice. Why? So the neighbors don't hear that you're sleeping with someone else? His expression changed then. The mask slipped for half a second, revealing something colder. Annoyance. Not remorse. Not guilt. Annoyance that I'd found out. You're being hysterical, he said flatly. Hysterical. I felt something inside me fracture permanently. Show me the messages, I said. He reached for his phone, unlocked it, and scrolled with controlled movements. Then he handed it to me. The thread was gone. Deleted. I stared at the blank screen. You're unbelievable, he said softly. You create drama, then when I prove you wrong, you just stand there. You deleted it. No, I didn't. It was right there. You must have clicked something. The confidence in his voice was surgical, precise, designed to make me question reality. I stepped back like he'd physically pushed me. You're lying. He stood up from the bed, towering over me. You need help. This paranoia, it's not healthy. Paranoia. I looked at the man I loved and for the first time saw a stranger. The shift was subtle, but undeniable. The warmth was gone. What stood in front of me was someone calculating outcomes. Get out, I whispered. He blinked. What? Get out of the bedroom, he scoffed. This is my condo, and I'll leave. He studied me, weighing the situation. And then, like flipping a switch, his entire demeanor softened. Hey, he said, stepping closer. Baby, look at me. I didn't move. He cupped my face gently. I would never hurt you like that. You know that, right? You're spiraling. We've been stressed. Work's been crazy. Let's not blow this up. The tenderness almost broke me. That was his power. He can shift from cold to comforting in seconds, and it made me doubt my instincts every time. I saw it. I whispered, I'm not crazy. He sighed like he was exhausted by me. Even if there was something flirtatious, it didn't mean anything. It's business. You don't understand how this world works. There it was. Not a denial. A minimization. My stomach dropped. So there is something. He ran a hand through his damped hair. You're making this bigger than it is. Are you sleeping with her? Silence. That silence told me everything. He didn't say yes. He didn't say no. He just stared at me like I was asking the wrong question. Finally he said, It's complicated. I felt my heart physically ache. Complicated. I repeated. I was going to tell you. When? When the timing made sense. The timing for who? For me? Or for you? He looked irritated again. You're emotional right now. Of course I was emotional. My entire relationship had just imploded at 2:30 in the morning. How long? I asked. He hesitated. A few months. A few months. That meant anniversaries. Family dinners. Weekend trips. All of it layered over a lie. Does she know about me? He looked away. That was another answer. I felt this strange calm wash over me. Like the panic had burned itself out and left something colder behind. You told her you'd tell me soon, I said. Tell me what? He swallowed. That we're not working. The words hit harder than the cheating. We're not working. As if the problem was mutual. As if I'd been part of some silent agreement to dismantle my own life. You were planning to leave me, I said quietly. I wasn't planning. He snapped. I was exploring options. Options. Like I was a lease he could break. I looked around the bedroom. Our photos on the dresser. The throw blanket I bought. The life I thought we were building. And realized I had been living in a story he controlled entirely. How many others? I asked. His eyes flashed. Don't push it. That answer was worse than any number. I grabbed my phone, he walked into the living room. My legs felt numb. He followed, his voice shifting between defensive and persuasive. You're overreacting. It's not that serious.
You're gonna throw away everything over one mistake? One mistake. I turned around slowly. You built a second relationship. He rubbed his temples. You haven't exactly been easy to be with.
There it was. The blame redirect. What did I do? I asked. You're needy? You question everything. You're insecure. I stared at him stunned. You cheated on me, and you pushing me away. He shot back. The audacity of it made me feel like I was losing oxygen. In that moment, I saw the pattern clearly. Every time he'd made me doubt myself. Every time he'd accused me of being too sensitive. Every time he'd isolated me from my friends. It wasn't random. It was strategy. And for the first time, I felt anger that wasn't tangled with guilt. I'm done, I said. He laughed softly, like I was bluffing. You're not done. Yes, I am. He stepped closer, voice low. You have nowhere to go at 3 a.m. He was right. It was freezing outside, snow still lining the streets. My car parked in the garage downstairs. But I also knew if I stayed until morning, he would twist this into something survivable. He would cry. He would promise. He would somehow make me responsible for fixing it. And I couldn't let that happen. I walked into the bedroom and started pulling clothes into a suitcase with shaking hands. He leaned against the doorframe, watching. You're being dramatic. Maybe I was, but for the first time in 2 years, I wasn't apologizing for it. He didn't try to stop me at first. That almost hurt more. I was on my knees on the hardwood floor, shoving jeans and sweaters into a suitcase I hadn't used since our trip to Napa, and he just stood there, leaning against the doorframe, like this was a minor inconvenience, like I'd be back by Sunday. You're really going to run away instead of talking like adults? He said. Run away. I zipped the suitcase harder than I needed to. There's nothing to talk about. He let out a slow breath. You're emotional. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking clearer than I have in 2 years. That made him straighten up. 2 years. The way I said it, like I'd finally woken up, must have unsettled him. He followed me into the living room as I dragged the suitcase behind me. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped my keys. You're going to regret this, he said calmly. That tone again. Not angry, not desperate, just controlled. I turned to look at him one last time before walking out. Do you regret sleeping with her? His jaw flexed. I regret that you found out like this. That was it. That was the closest he would ever come to an apology. I walked out. The elevator ride down to the garage felt surreal. My reflection in the mirrored walls looked like someone else, mascara smudged, face pale, eyes hollow. I loaded my suitcase into the trunk of my car and just sat there with my hands on the steering wheel. It was almost 3 a.m. Snowflakes drifted past the windshield under the garage lights. My phone buzzed. Ryan. I let it go to voicemail. Then it buzzed again, and again. By the time I pulled out onto the street, I had 6 missed calls and 3 texts. You're being irrational. Come back so we can talk. If you leave like this, that's on you. That's on you. I drove to Hannah's place in the suburbs because I didn't know where else to go. I hadn't told her everything about the last year. I'd defended him too many times. But when she opened her door in sweatpants and saw my face, she didn't ask questions. She just pulled me into a hug. I didn't cry right away. I just stood there, stiff and numb, like if I relaxed, I meant shatter. We sat at her kitchen table while I told her everything. The gaslighting, the jealousy, the comments, the message from Sophie. Hannah's face changed as I talked, from confusion to anger. He's been cheating on you for months, she said. At least. And he tried to blame you? I nodded. She leaned back in her chair. I never liked the way he looked at you. That surprised me. What do you mean? Like you were something he owned? The word landed heavy. Owned. Over the next few days, my phone didn't stop lighting up. Ryan alternated between apologies and accusations. 1 minute he missed me. The next he said I was humiliating him by staying with Hannah. He asked if I was telling people. He warned me not to spin the narrative. Spin the narrative. I didn't respond. I took time off work. I couldn't focus. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those messages. That line, I hate when she's home, looping in my head. But something else started happening too. Silence. Without him in the room, without his constant commentary, I could hear my own thoughts again. I started replaying the relationship from the beginning, but this time without the filter of love. The way he rushed everything. The way he isolated me. The way he turned every argument into a debate he had to win. I remembered the Christmas party. The brunette in the black jumpsuit. I remembered him disappearing for hours after fights. I remembered how small I'd felt. And then I remembered something that made my stomach twist. About 4 months ago, he'd mentioned a work conference in Miami. 3 days. He'd sent me photos of the hotel lobby. The beach view. Told me he missed me. I went to his Instagram. Scrolled back. There were no photos from Miami. None. He'd said the conference was confidential, so he couldn't post. I felt that slow, sick realization creeping back in. I opened my email and searched for the flight confirmation he'd forwarded me before the trip. It was still there, except the return date was different than I remembered. He told me he'd be back Sunday night. The confirmation said Monday afternoon, an entire extra night. I stared at the screen, heart bounding. Had he been with her then too? The more I thought about it, the more pieces started shifting. There had been other, late meetings, other unexplained weekends when he claimed he needed space. I felt foolish, not just betrayed but manipulated on a level that made me question my own intelligence. 3 days after I left, Sophie messaged me, not through him, directly. She found me on Instagram. "Hi, I think we need to talk." My hands went cold. I didn't respond right away. I showed Hannah first. "Do it," she said. "You deserve the truth." So I replied. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop in Bucktown the next afternoon. I almost didn't go. Part of me didn't want to see her face. Didn't want to compare myself. Didn't want to hear details. But another part of me needed confirmation that I wasn't insane. She was already there when I walked in. Blonde. Like the photos. Pretty in a polished, effortless way. She looked nervous. When our eyes met, there was no hostility. Just shared exhaustion. "Hi," she said quietly. "Hi." We sat down across from each other. For a moment neither of us spoke. Then she said, "I didn't know about you. Not until last week." My chest tightened. "He told you we weren't working." She nodded. "He said you were basically roommates. That you refused to move out. That he felt trapped." Trapped? The word made me laugh bitterly. "He lives in a condo he owns," I said. "I broke my lease to move in." Her eyes widened slightly. "He told me he'd been trying to end it for months. That you were unstable." Unstable. I felt something hot flare in my chest. "I told you were a client," I said.
Her lips parted. "He said I was just a friend from college when he talked about you. Friend from college." The lies were layered, tailored to each of us. "How long?" I asked. "Almost 8 months." 8. That overlapped with nearly everything. Holidays, birthdays, my promotion dinner. She swallowed. "He talked about marrying me." I stared at her. "He said he'd never felt this understood before." She added softly. The same script. We sat there. 2 women comparing notes like detectives piecing together a crime scene. The Miami trip? He was with her. The Christmas party? He left early and met her downtown. The nights he'd accused me of flirting with coworkers? He'd been projecting. Every accusation he'd thrown at me had been a mirror of his own behavior. By the end of the conversation, there was no anger left between us. Just clarity. "He can't keep doing this," she said. I nodded slowly. For the first time since I walked out of that condo, I didn't feel confused. I felt steady. Because now it wasn't just my word against his. It was a pattern. And patterns don't lie. After I left that coffee shop, I sat in my car for almost 20 minutes. Engine off, hands resting on the steering wheel, just staring straight ahead.
8 months. 2 parallel relationships. 2 versions of him. 2 completely different narratives. And somehow he'd made both of us feel like we were the problem. Sophie and I didn't hug when we left. It wasn't that kind of bond. It was something quieter. A shared understanding. We weren't allies exactly, but we weren't enemies either. We were witnesses. That night, Ryan showed up at Hannah's house. He didn't text, didn't call first, just rang the doorbell like he had every right to be there. Hannah looked at me from the kitchen window. "You want me to tell him to leave?" I took a slow breath. "No. I'll handle it." When I stepped outside, the air was sharp and cold. He stood on the porch in a dark coat, hands in his pockets, looking composed as ever. "Can we talk?" he asked. "You've had plenty of chances." He studied my face carefully, like he was trying to gauge how much I knew. "You met with her?" It wasn't a question. "Yes." His jaw tightened slightly. "She's not stable." I actually smiled. Not because it was funny, because it was predictable. She said the same thing about me. I replied. He exhaled through his nose. "You two comparing notes doesn't change anything. It changes everything." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You don't know the full story." "Then tell me." Silence. He shifted tactics. I could see it happening in real time. "You're throwing away 2 years over misunderstandings," he said. "We had something real." "We?" I asked quietly. "Or the version of me you needed at the time?" His eyes flickered. That landed. "You think you're perfect?" He snapped. "You pushed me away constantly. You questioned me. You never trusted me. I started questioning you when things stopped adding up. Because you're insecure." "No," I said calmly. "Because you were lying." The calmness unsettled him more than tears ever had. He ran a hand through his hair. "Fine. I made mistakes. I got attention from someone else. It felt good. That doesn't erase what we had. It does for me." His face hardened. "So that's it? You're just done?" "Yes." He stared at me for a long moment, searching for doubt, for weakness, for any crack he could wedge himself back into. When he didn't find one, his tone shifted again. "You'll regret this," he said quietly. "No one is going to love you like I did." The old me would have felt fear at that sentence. Panic. What if he was right? What if this was the best I could do? But standing there under the porch light, I realized something. The way he loved me had nearly erased me. "I hope you're wrong," I said. That was the last real conversation we ever had. The breakup wasn't dramatic after that. It was logistical. I coordinated with him to pick up the rest of my things while he was at work. I walked through that condo one final time. The place that once felt like the beginning of my future. And it felt like a set after filming wrapped. Hollow. Staged. I found small reminders everywhere. The throw pillows I chose. The framed photo from Lake Geneva. The wine glasses we bought together. I didn't take the photo. I didn't need the memory. As I packed the last box, I felt something unexpected. Relief. Not joy. Not empowerment. Just relief. Like I had been holding my breath for 2 years and finally exhaled. A week later, Sophie called me. I ended it. She said. I figured. He tried to say we could work through it. She added. Said you were manipulating me. I shook my head even though she couldn't see it. Of course he did. He told me you'd come crawling back. That almost made me laugh. He doesn't know me anymore, I said. After we hung up, I blocked his number. Blocked him on everything. Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, even Venmo. Total silence. The first month was harder than I expected. Not because I missed him exactly, but because I missed the idea of who I thought he was. The good mornings. The future plans. The version of him that only showed up when he needed to pull me back in. I had to untangle reality from illusion. I started therapy. The word narcissist came up in the second session. Not as a dramatic label. Not as a buzzword. Just as a pattern. The love bombing. The gaslighting. The projection. The control. Hearing it laid out clinically was both validating and devastating. It meant I wasn't crazy. But it also meant none of it had been accidental. I began rebuilding small things first. I reconnected with friends I distanced myself from. I said yes to invitations without worrying about who would be there. I wore what I wanted. Laughed loudly again. Told stories without editing myself mid-sentence. And slowly, the fog lifted. About 3 months after the breakup, I ran into him at a bar in West Loop. I almost didn't recognize him at first. He was with a brunette this time. Younger. Hanging onto his arm the way I used to. When our eyes met, there was a flicker of something. Not longing. Not regret.